who's next? Yeah, who's next? Who'll ride a greyhound all night long? Welcome to the C.L.I.M.B. This is a show dedicated to helping singers like you, songwriters also like you, and indie artists like you create leverage in the music business. This podcast exists because we want you to win. We want you to get motivated. We want you to get inspired. We want you to get educated on exactly how you can take control of your own destiny and make it happen and create leverage for yourself as a songwriter and as an artist. And that's why we named it the C.L.I.M.B, creating leverage in the music business. So with that, the intelligent wordsmith that actually put that together happens to be my co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter. Brent's an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady Antebellum, Joe Nichols, and more, along with a few of my artists as well, I'm proud to say, and honored to say. And Brent, what I love about Brent, too, he helps songwriters turn pro by teaching the art, the craft, and the business of songwriting. And you can find Brent at songwritingpro.com. Once again, easy to find Brent at songwritingpro.com.
And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. It's an innovative artist development company. They help you find your sound and they help you find your audience. Two things you might just need in a music career. All right. So not only do they develop and improve your artistry, they also grow and monetize your fan base, creating that all-important cash flow. Daredevil's worked with multi-platinum artists like Colin Ray, Tracy Lawrence, Ty Herndon, and Andy Griggs, just to name a few. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That's production singular, no S, and we all know why, because, ladies and gentlemen, there's only one Johnny D.
How you doing, brother?
It's like Sunny D, only with vodka in it.
That's right. He knows me. The world is sunnier with vodka for me. This is the life I live. I like that. How you doing, man? You all right?
Yeah, man, I'm doing well. Anytime I can get you laughing, I'm enjoying myself.
Oh, good, dude. You do it all the time. I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful for you, man. That's fun. Well, hey, guys, we got a lot of stuff to get to today. We want to remind you, if you like these podcasts, share them. We continue to grow. We're well over 40,000 downloads now, which we're grateful for, thankful for. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you, guys.
It means you're sharing. It means that we're talking about something that's personal to you and relevant to you enough that you want to share it with other people. So don't stop doing that. And please take a couple seconds and leave a rating and review. We're going to read it on the air. We'll make you famous, at least amongst a few thousand people.
Because that's how it happens. And if you believe that, you haven't been listening to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
So anyway, today we're going to talk about intelligent design and how the limited success that you've had up until now can explode with just a little bit of intelligent design when you add to it. And we're going to cover a couple of different things, but one of the concepts I want you to, that I think a lot of artists miss that I find is a big part of our job at Daredevil when we first start working with an artist is helping them find their lane. And that comes with an intelligent design, like an understanding of what's happening in the market. And we have an artist that comes in, I want to be Garth Brooks. It's like, awesome. Okay, but we've got a Garth Brooks. So,
he's doing okay.
Yeah, he's doing good.
We already got his records.
Yeah, he's got that all locked up in that lane. So what are we going to do for you? And then how much traffic is in that lane? One of the smartest things that ever happened with Taylor Swift was she freaking created a lane that didn't exist. So there was absolutely zero traffic in it. I'm going to talk to 9 to 14-year-old kids in country music.
Oh, yeah. A lot of audience.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people talking to them.
No. And even, some of the younger sensational artists in country music when they came out, like Tanya Tucker, her first number one, she recorded at 13 years old, and it was number one at 14. And Leanne Rimes. I mean, but they were singing adult songs, kind of, right? Then maybe they weren't age, and not say they're age inappropriate, but she wasn't singing to 9 to 14. They weren't singing to their peers. They were singing to older people. So, but it's about that was intelligent design. Like that really worked well. So, Brent, I got a I got a test for you. Have you ever heard of Bert Hinkler?
Bert Hinkler?
Mm-hmm.
No, my first name was almost Bert.
Really?
My parents came close.
Oh,
Naming me Bert, I'd have been Brent Baxter, which is almost like correct. But no.
But you're not a Bert. You're Brent. Like they made the right choice.
Apparently they did.
Well, most people haven't heard of Bert Hinkler because
I have not.
And Bert Hinkler did something amazing, and he did this amazing feat faster and more efficiently than the first person who did it. So he was way better. He was way better than the first guy. Mm-hmm. Hands down. But he was second. And that's why you don't know who he is. So you know who you do remember? Charles Lindbergh in the Spirit of St. Louis. And he was the first person to successfully fly a single-engine airplane solo, nonstop, across the Atlantic Ocean. And Bert Hinkler did it second, did it faster time, less fuel, was way better, but we don't know who he is because he was second, okay? You want to hear something crazy? You weren't aware of the number 2 person who succeeded in this incredible flight, the same feat we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. But I'll bet you know who the number 3 person was. Amelia Earhart.
Oh.
And what's
didn't know her for that.
And what's the twist? She was the 3rd person to fly a single-engine airplane solo, nonstop across the Atlantic. But why do we know her?
First female.
Boom. Right? Mm-hmm. So how come you know the first, you haven't heard of the second, but the third is also famous? Because she was the first woman to do it. That's the answer. This is called the law of leadership. This is what I want to instill upon all of our brains today. It's an amazing book, and it's called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. I highly recommend you read it. You can get it right now on Amazon, a used copy for 98 cents. So do it. And it's going to help you get a 30,000-foot view before you start, cutting down the wrong trees, right? And working on the wrong things. It's going to help you focus a little bit more. And by the way, help you do some of the stuff that we do at Daredevil. Like, this is what we kind of do is like, let's, instead of focusing on that fire over there, let's go over here where there's a bunch of people and no fire. They need a fire over here, right? Mm-hmm. And so the question that you ask yourself is, am I trying to succeed as an artist by default, or are you trying to succeed as an artist by design? I'm going to ask that question one more time. Are you trying to succeed as an artist by default, or are you trying to succeed as an artist by design? I meet most artists, and they're trying to succeed by default. And to your point before, a few episodes before, Brent, it's because you just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? You get a brand new job, even if it's at McDonald's, you don't know what the heck to do. And they're like, here's a manual. I'm going to show you exactly how to make the fries, Yeah. And just do this every time. And so this is some of that knowledge that I want to instill upon you. But, and to be clear here, my definition of success and succeeding is this. You make a living at writing, recording, and performing your music. And making a living at all of these or just one and doing what you love to do means no day gig. And whether you're famous or not is just a different degree of success. But the success comes when you really get to live your life on your own terms and do what you do, Mm-hmm. So I think, too many of you are trying to become successful by default. And there's 3 kinds of people in this world. There's people who make things happen. There's people who watch what happens.
Then there's me.
And
what will happen?
And there's people who wonder what happened. That's right. And 33% of the people make things happen because they approach success by design. Okay? Mm-hmm. And they choose to learn so they know what they're doing. And people who win by design make a choice to follow an educated path, and they spend their precious time and resources in the most effective places. More education means less naivete. And that means, by the way, that 66% of people are the ones who watch what happens and wonder what happened, and they live by default. The world happens to them. Mm-hmm. You've got friends like this. Here's why I couldn't do this, because it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
This didn't happen or that didn't happen. It was not my fault. Somebody else's fault. It's like, well, no, you're missing something. It's your fault.
Yeah.
And then when you win too, you got to know why you won, right? You got to know how you succeeded. You got to know how you got that base hit or whatever. So, you're an artist, for God's sake, right? By definition, you, the artist, are supposed to happen to the world.
Yep.
Think about that. So that's a poor excuse of the world is happening to me. If you're considering yourself an artist and you're making excuses of why everything else is happening to you and you're not happening to the world, already you're saying, I'm not an artist. That's what you're saying to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know some people like that, I'm sure, Brent.
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about it because they might be listening.
But if you're going to be an artist that happens to the world, and I don't believe there are artists where the world's happened to them, and if there is, I don't know about them. So, did it happen? Right?
All right.
You must build your career by design, and building and living by design means you cannot watch what happens and you cannot wonder what happened. You must know what's going on, and education is the key. And there's all kinds of education out there, and and there's different varying degrees of cost on that education, but mostly people just don't spend the time because they let the world happen to them by default, But you make no mistake about it, guys, you're the CEO of your own company. And the biggest and the best companies like yours, and here's some other names: Apple, Hewlett-Packard, Ford, Madonna, Metallica, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, they started out of a garage, just like you are right now. But they grew by design. So when you say to yourself, I suck at business, or I suck at marketing, what do you think I'm going to say right now, Brent?
You're in the wrong business, because so much of music is marketing, and it's the music business.
And I'll say that you're right, and that makes you a sucky CEO. And there's nothing wrong with being a poor CEO of your own little company, but you won't succeed. Sorry, you don't get to say that. You can't be a car maker, be Ford, and say, well, we just suck at marketing, and we suck at business. Or guess what? You're not Ford. You're just not in business, and nobody's ever heard of you. You have to become a better business person.
But that's all right.
Smarter.
You can suck at the beginning of success.
Boom. Oh, see?
Oh,
that's
the words are coming. Oh, there we go. But only at the beginning of success. You move past it.
That's right. So, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, you're in charge. And if you suck at some mission critical part of your dream, you got to address it. You got to identify it and you got to address it right now. And the 22 immutable laws of marketing, they say that the CEO isn't in charge of his or her own marketing, is living by default. And to work by design, you have to be in charge. You have to work with the outside companies that you hire to ensure that your brand is being conveyed correctly. Are you waiting for someone to sign you? You're living by default. You're waiting for the world to happen to you. Are you waiting to meet that one big relationship before you kick it into second gear and really get serious about this career of yours? Again, living by default. You have to get it going. You're your only hope. And man, there's a couple artists who just, for whatever reason, got really lucky, and everything just sort of happened to them, and maybe it happened to them really early. And a lot of those artists that you have that perception of, I promise you, somebody was doing something by design.
That's what I was thinking. Is like they may not have a design, but somebody around them had a design, and their design for their personal success had to do with getting that artist successful. They were part of somebody else's design. Boom,
there you go.
Have y'all, if you've seen the movie, what was it, That Thing You Do, about the band The Wonders, the Tom Hanks movie? Yeah, great movie. They were just like, we're just playing shows, and our drummer broke his arm, and we got another drummer, and then we had this, we got played on the local radio, and then Tom Hanks shows up, and then boom, stuff starts happening. Maybe not quite by their design, but it was sure his.
Yep.
They may not have seen it. It just kind of happened. It's just great. We just had fun. We played shows, and no, there was a design there.
Yeah,
they just weren't really aware of it.
That's a good point. So let's take the Beatles for instance, right? Mm-hmm. So the Beatles.
I'm just more of a Wonders fan myself. I mean, there's that great Wonders Beatles divide, and I'm more of a Captain Geach and the Shrimp Shack Shooters kind of guy.
I don't even know what that is.
That's a deep reference from the movie. It's stupid.
Okay. That's right. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I mean, when Brian Epstein came in and started managing the Beatles, man, he did some big things to them, right? Mm-hmm. Like put them in suits with the black ties, had them trim their hair. They all had really long hair, what was considered long hair for that time in the 60s. And that was, like, oh my gosh, that meant you were like a rock star. But he had them, they were trimmed, they were nice and neat, no split ends. I mean, he had them looking good. They bowed after every song. And that was by design by Brian Epstein. And here's the other thing, the Beatles let him do it.
Yeah.
And so part of the struggle at Daredevil, I'll tell you right now, is finding artists with the kind of weight and the kind of talent and the kind of that are on the right spot on their journey where they're sort of ready to pop and go to the next level, who also will play in the sandbox with me. Let me do what I need to do for them. And just trust me, because sometimes, to quote a dear friend of mine, Jeff Teague, sometimes you don't need to know how the watch works. You just need to know what freaking time it is.
Right, yeah.
So, so they're aware, like, hey, we need to get in front of more people. Can you help us get in front of more people? Yes, but you have to do what I tell you to do. Okay, we'll do it. And then they do it and they play and we win, right? And we get more followers. So
did he mess with the music?
I think he stayed out of the way of the music. I think it was more of an image management kind of a thing, but that's a big deal, I mean,
yeah, that is a big deal. But also, he kind of music's good. I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to help serve it up in a way that's more
right. I mean, I think
palatable.
It was a very symbiotic relationship, and it wasn't. A lot of times people get into that sort of position and they become a little too big in their britches, and they start wanting to. I mean, really, you're going to freaking tell the Beatles how to write a song? Yeah,
right. Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that.
Yeah.
The walrus thing. I don't know about that. I don't think that's ever going to fly. Okay. But so this is the difference between saying, okay, if you know you're weak in an area, then either you have to learn or you got to let somebody teach you as well, right? Mm-hmm. And whether you go out and get that, for Daredevil artists, they pay for it, right? That's how I make my living. I mean, they're like, Johnny, make our audience bigger. Okay, do this, and this, and they pay me enough money where they listen to me.
Yeah.
But it's but that's part of it. So and there may be one or two artists out there who just freaking got lucky. Like I wrote one song and it turned out to be a mega hit song, and I just so happens that I'm prolific, and I found out because I stumbled over a rock that I'm a rock star now. But is that really what you're going to make your business model out of? Winning the lottery.
Right.
I mean,
hope is a terrible strategy.
It's a terrible strategy. That's right.
All right.
I mean, ask your landlord about that, or your mortgage company. Hey, as soon as I win the lottery, I'm going to get you guys paid off. It's going to be one check. But for now, I just need you to hold off.
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't live by hope.
No.
They live by intelligent design. So
there you go.
So let's talk about being first, because I think, when we start out as artists, right, we started emulating. We started that's because we love something so much that inspires us to want to be an artist, that we want to be like that. So we pretend to be like that. This is a very natural first step to becoming an artist. But then at some point you've got to disconnect and you've got to say, okay, now it's time for me to do my own thing. And we've talked about this in a past episode, where it's the work. The more work you do, the more solid you really start to understand these little things that you do that make you different, and you begin to forge your artistic fingerprint, right?
Right.
But in terms of marketing, we can substitute leading for first. If you had to pick like the number one leading institution in this country for advanced education, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Like Harvard.
Boom. Guess what? Harvard was first institution in this country. Founded in 1636. William and Mary College is the second oldest, and they're slightly more famous than Bert Hinkler. Okay, so Time Magazine versus Newsweek. Who was first?
Time.
Yep. Advil versus Nuprin. Who was first?
Advil.
There you go. So, by the way, here's something else that's interesting when we talk about being first in the marketplace, right? It's better to be first than to be better. Better to be first than to be better. Would it surprise you, this is a fact, that twins, identical twins, often complain that the first of the two whom a person meets always remains their favorite, even though the person gets to meet the other twin?
Interesting.
Right? So you got twin number one, twin number two, and you just happen to meet somebody and they meet twin number one first. They're always going to be, the favorite twin's always going to be twin number one because that's who they met first. And they're identical.
That's weird.
That's crazy, right? So it's better to be first than to be better. The Sony lost $1 billion on the Betamax tape, which was a far better video recording tape than VHS. Mm-hmm. But Seagram's, who owned Polygram and owned a major movie studio, which I believe was Paramount, the big multi-billion-dollar conglomerate of Seagram's, was the first to be in the marketplace with movie titles because they had access to the titles. Mm-hmm. And so guess what? It wasn't a better format. It wasn't better quality, but it became the ubiquitous quality. It became the thing that everybody had because they were first in the marketplace. So that's the number one immutable law of marketing. I mean, you can't be first like Xerox with copiers, right? People stand in front of a Ricoh copier and ask for a Xerox copy, right? Kleenex is the first brand of facial tissue. Gore-Tex, Jell-O, fiberglass, Saran wrap, Scotch tape. These are if you can't be first in a category, then you can be first in a subcategory, which is why we know Amelia Earhart. Subcategory, not the first person across the Atlantic, but the first woman to do it. Oh, that's different, right? Yeah. Chrysler, for instance, and we're just talking about brands here, right? Chrysler has just 10% of the auto market. So they're way behind Ford and Chevrolet. But they own 50% of the minivan market.
Sadly, I got a Chrysler minivan garage right now.
You got a need one. You got a need for one. But
we call it Big Red, and Ruby Jean calls it Big and Red. Are we gonna take Big and Red? It's my midlife Chrysler.
Your midlife Chrysler.
Yeah.
I like that.
Can we please change the subject now?
Well, here's my point. They were the first one to come out with the minivan. They created a product that nobody ever had before. They created a subcategory, and they were the ones that were into that. So, I can hear some of you right now. We're talking about Chrysler. We're talking about Xerox copies, and you're like, what does this have to do with me as an artist? Answer is everything. This is called the law of category. What is your artistic lane or category? What are you doing differently to make yourself identifiable? Hello? You know what that is? Knock, knock, knock. These are design questions. These are questions that you need to ask yourself. Right? We talked about Taylor Swift already for the first one to really talk to 9 to 14-year-olds. Kiss was the first rock group to make makeup famous and provide this bombastic live show. Kiss's first 3 records bombed. They did them in 1 year. Almost broke Casablanca Records. Almost broke the record label. But because their makeup and their live show was so huge, that was floating the band and kept them going.
Interesting.
Motley Crue was the first in the market, the new market, with that sort of 80s glam metal sound. They sort of added to what David Bowie did with glam and made it harder edge. So they took something a step further, right? And when I say first in the market, I also mean, and this is an important distinction, first in the market's awareness. They were first in the mind of the consumer. maybe there was 100 Motley Crues before Motley Crue, but they didn't do a good enough job of getting the word out.
Right.
And so, according to the rest of the world, Motley Crue was the first. Just ask them. They'll tell you.
Yeah, kind of like, I guess what some people knock against Elvis. He took black music and just took to the white audience. He covered songs, Hound Dog, watered it down and presented it up to a white audience. And so some of those songs were then the first in the minds of those consumers then, and he was doing something that he didn't invent.
Yeah.
That's, some people say, no, he just took what was already there, but he was a white dude when singing at the county fair.
Beautiful. Yeah. Pretty face. Mm-hmm. Had the hips, like crazy hips and stuff, and brought that whole, there was a level of, danger to him, right? Okay. I mean, when they, back in the, this sounds ridiculous now considering the videos that are out, but in the 50s, when he was on TV, they wouldn't shoot him from the waist down because they thought it was too suggestive. Mm-hmm. So, and the girls would just go bananas because they didn't care. They saw it live and it was like, holy crap, like that is amazing. So, there's lots of different ways that you can sort of craft your lane, right? And understand this, marketing is a mental game. So the products, to a degree, don't matter. They matter, but you have to understand the mental part of the game because you can have the best product in the world, but if you're not marketing and playing the mental game, then does the product matter? No. Mm-hmm. Does anybody care? All of us at one point or another listen to this podcast, have uploaded a song to iTunes. Well, if you haven't done anything to market it, how does it matter? Did it matter for your pocketbook? Does anybody download it? Does anybody care? No. So you understand what I'm saying here. So it's better to be first than to be better. And if we talked about the Beatles with what Brian Epstein did for them, and because he cleaned them up and he put them in those ties, and they were adorable when they bowed after every single song. He sort of packaged them to be this group of this British rock group that the girls could take home to mom, kind of a thing, right? Mm-hmm. They were clean cut kids, but with rock star hair. But then Andrew Loog Oldham, who was Brian Epstein's assistant, with the Beatles, learned everything that Brian Epstein did with the Beatles and then applied that to this other group that came out around the same time the Beatles came out. You might have heard of them, the Rolling Stones. And so again, here he is, intelligent design, not by default. He didn't have the Rolling Stones. God, these guys are great. Why doesn't anybody understand who they are? Like the world should come to us. That's not the way that he approached it. And this is the Rolling Stones. They were freaking compelling. There's nobody that can deny that they're not, right? Mm-hmm. But he also knew that he couldn't market them like the Beatles. Yeah.
We already had one of those.
Right? So they had to be the anti-Beatles, right? So he's saying, okay, so I'm going to let your hair grow out, let it, I want you to wear leather. I want you to, dress this way. And you guys, you're dangerous. The Beatles are clean cut. You can take them home to mom, but you're the secret that the girls have to keep under their pillow or under their bed, right? A picture of you guys mom and dad can't see that because they might freak out and throw you into a private school or something, So the Rolling Stones, when they came out, they looked different than the Beatles by design. Mm-hmm. That's what I want to talk about. What is your thought process that you're putting into this? So if marketing was objectively product based, like we all want to believe, like if it was based on the product, there would be no sucky music. No artists would be famous unless they were super talented. But I mean, look at Jennifer Lopez is on, one of the last judges of American Idol. Paula Abdul, one of the first judges of American Idol. Neither one of them could ever win that contest. Yeah. They found other ways, right? Yep. And they knew how to market. And that's not an indictment of their talent. I mean, Jennifer Lopez is a dancer first. No big surprise. Guess what? So is Paula Abdul. Mm-hmm. So that's never been the case. Being whoever markets better wins. Being the first in the market is important only to the extent that it allows you to be first in the mind of the consumer. So it's important in the music industry that, many really talented artists have been signed for the sole purpose of being shelved to keep them off the market so that they don't compete with the label's priority. You know a couple people like that, Brent?
Well, I'm just going to say that's the reason people need to listen to your last episode about controlling your own destiny. It's that didn't happen to you.
That's right. If you're just joining the podcast for the first time and working your way backwards, that's 2 episodes prior.
Exactly.
But this is good to know. There's a lot of artists who get signed for that very reason. They get wooed. Oh my God, you're amazing. We can't wait to get our hands all over you. We're going to make you into a big star. They get the whole pitch. They feel like $1 million, and the only reason the label's signing them is to make sure they don't end up on the air because they're conflicting with an artist that they already have.
That's cold. That's cold.
It's cold, but it's business, and guess what? You don't have to sign it. You better know. You better know your game. You better bring your A game. So, this is good to know if you're looking at a record deal. Why are they signing you? Better know all the artists on the label roster, right? Because you want to make sure because I promise you, the courtship feels exactly the same for everybody, right? They're going to woo you the same way. It's only the outcome that's going to change. The MITS Altair 8800 was the first personal computer, believe it or not. Came out in 1974. Completely tragic name, right?
Yeah, I couldn't even say it back to you right now.
And 2 years later, the Apple II came out in 1976. MTS Altair 8800 versus the Apple II.
There's only one of them I'm qualified to ask for.
That's right.
At the store.
And so here's the point. Apple had a better name and had better marketing. And so even though they came out 2 years after the MITS Altair 8800, they were first in the mind of the consumer. And you all got smartphones now, So marketing is a battle of perception, not products. So the mind takes precedence over the marketplace. It's one thing to be an amazing artist, but it's another thing to be in the mind of the consumer, right? And this is called the law of the mind in that book. Okay? Everybody lives within their own perception. Their reality is their perception. You've got to understand this. You've got to think like this. So think about this in terms of politics or religion or your bandmates' opinions on the best artists or the best equipment, right? How about, emotionally and sexually abused people? Their perception is that they don't think they're worth anything because that's what they're being told, and that then becomes the reality, doesn't it? Right? So it doesn't matter... the reality doesn't matter as much as perception, but in today's music business, the perception had better be based on authenticity, so it better be real. And I don't mean to make that sound confusing, but it's true. You've got to be real and you've got to be genuine, or the market's going to see through you. So, hype won't make perception a reality until your audience perceives you to be real. You're a fantasy. Until your audience is aware of you, you're the Altair 8800, the MITS 8800. And some dude with half your talent who's got Apple II is going to eat your lunch.
Right, yeah. It's simple. I get that. Yeah, one thing thinking about, finding your lane as an artist, I think about Kenny Chesney. And he was, he's rocking along. He was having some hits, every now and again and stuff, but he was still kind of a mid-card kind of guy. And then he got his feet on the white sand of a beach somewhere. I was like, oh, I like this. I think I'll sing about this. And you can see as he kind of transitioned through, songs like How Forever Feels and some of this stuff where he started bringing more of the beach into what he did. Right. Where that became kind of his shtick. That became his thing. He would like do beach songs and stuff that kind of hit the nostalgia button. And that became his lane that no one else was in. And he became like the country Jimmy Buffett, different from Jimmy, but he had his own flavor to it. And that's really when his career took off. And by the way, okay, so take that a step further. Different from Jimmy, but Jimmy Buffett doesn't sing country music, does he? Yep. Jimmy wasn't getting played on country radio. So there wasn't a jump. There wasn't a Jimmy Buffett in country music, so that lane was unoccupied. Right. Exactly. You're definitely on the radio, but it gave the people that like Jimmy Buffett somewhere else to go as well.
Yep.
You know, it's like, ooh, I like Jimmy, and I like some of this country guy as well. But yeah, it opened up that lane, and now maybe he's not doing as much of that stuff, and you see some people like Jake Owen doing a little bit more of that stuff, going to the beach more. You know, Jake's a Florida boy, so he comes by it honest, and you know, some of that stuff when they, you know, most artists seem like do like a beach song here or there, but you know, guys that kind of have it as part of their brand, you can see that's a way to kind of differentiate. Or you know, the Blue-Eyed Soul Singer, or you know, the honky tonk guy. You know, they kind of have their thing they do. Aaron Tippin, I think about him a lot as an example of that, because he was like very much like working man, blue collar, you know, he never skipped an arm day, you know, so he's always in the white wife beaters in most of his, you know, videos showing off the guns
out,
with the guns out, sun's out, guns out. And that was his thing, like working man's PhD. I Got It Honest, you know, these songs that spoke to that very blue collar, hardworking, middle class, you know, guy.
There you go. And so he's creating that lane and creating that brand. And then doesn't that give you more clarity on what songs you're going to choose or what songs you're going to write?
This is for the lunch pail crowd, the guys that are lugging their lunch to the construction site. These are my guys.
Yep. If you work for a union, you love Aaron Tippin.
Exactly. Here's your union card and your Aaron Tippin CD.
So do you see what we're saying here, guys? Like falling into the often inaccurate, by the way, assumption that you have more talent, therefore you deserve success is killing you. You're a ghost in the market. The artist who wins will be the artist who infiltrates the consumer's mind first, talented or not. If they're in the mind, they're going to win. The artist who stands out, who is the most unique in the new music business. And so therefore, you know, the artists who lack on a body of work simply won't have authentic art. The more work that you do as an artist to close the gap between your taste and your authenticity, the more authentic your art becomes, and therefore you're going to craft that fingerprint, that artistic fingerprint, that brand of yours. And this is why covers are important. I keep bringing it up, but cut the crap. You're not going to be misconstrued as a cover artist. We don't think of Carrie Underwood as a cover artist, but that's how she came into your awareness. We don't think of Led Zeppelin as a cover artist, but guess what? Their first record was all covers. We don't think of the Stones. Their first two records were covers. Beatles, their first record was a cover. So cut the crap. You know, use that. You know, the reality is right now you're not being seen by anybody as any kind of an artist in the industry, right? So so make that work. And until you put in that work and that cover work, you're not gonna get in the minds of any consumers. And it's not about your music right now. It's about what people think about your music. Okay, so there's an important distinction, and I'll tell you why it's different. So, like, if objectivity on a product were the determining factor in marketing, right, whether it was a better product or not, then all products would perform equally throughout the globe. So, in America, for instance, the top 3 Japanese auto imports are Honda, Toyota, and Nissan in that order. Now, if people purchase based on the objectivity of a product, like the design is better, the functionality, the styling, all this, then the same ranking would exist in Japan. But it doesn't, because the Japanese think about these brands differently than we do. Japan's top 3 selling auto brands are Toyota, Nissan, and then Honda. Honda comes in third because the Japanese think of Honda as a motorcycle company first, not a car company. And you may think, well, that's weird, but it's like, okay, well, think about this. How excited would you be to buy a Harley-Davidson car?
All right.
We think of Harley-Davidson as a motorcycle company. That's what we think about them, right? So it's not as much about the music, it is what people think about the music, you know? And so we're talking about, for instance, going back to Kenny Chesney, right? He started bringing that Jimmy Buffett thing. Well, when they think about Kenny Chesney, they think about the beach. You know? And they think about a party, and they think about rum drinks, and they think about swimming with swimsuits and tans and guns and boats.
If you don't give your audience something to think about when they think about your music, they'll just think about something else.
There you go. I mean, how about this? In America, number 1 soup, Campbell's soup. In England, number 1 soup is Heinz. You know,
they drink the ketchup soup.
See, most people don't even know that Heinz makes soup, but they're huge in England. So
it's songwriter soup. You squirt the ketchup and you mix in a little water, and there's your tomato soup.
And that's how you eat. That's how you eat when you songwriter soup. So listen, guys, we want you to win. The question is, what are you going to do to get yourself in the mind of the consumer and in the mind of new people? You're only going to win by penetrating the mind of the consumer. And if you don't know how to do it, you got to get someone to do it for you. If you can't afford to get somebody to do it for you, then get an education and learn. But understand how to do it. Understand how to approach it and ask the right questions, you know? And that's all I got to say about that. Find your lane, right?
There we go.
All right, guys. Well, we went a little bit long on this, so I'm going to wrap it up real quick. Once again, if you're new to the podcast, you can get a free my best-selling Twitter book for free at giftfromjohnny.com, giftfromjohnny.com, JOHNNY. It's a tour through the app, and it just teaches you how to use Twitter as a marketing tool and gain 1,000 new followers. And it's the same code for Instagram, by the way. And I also want to let you know that if this kind of stuff, this show kind of got you thinking and asking the right questions, but you're not sure how to apply it to your specific situation, I'm available to you for consulting. We do charge for that, but get in touch with me at info@daredevilproduction.com. Again, there's no S, it's a singular, info@daredevilproduction.com, and we will and we can make arrangements, and you'd be amazed at what we could accomplish in less than 2 hours. But I'll look at all your social media platforms, YouTube, website, web store, if you even have one, and start to craft a strategy for you and start to help you, guide you in the right direction as if you were my artist, and what we can do to help you create that lane, okay? So, again, share this stuff if you like it. This podcast exists because we want to provide some motivational, inspirational, and educational content for you. So leave us a rating and review, tell your friends about it, and keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.